Welcome to today's landscape tutorial for beginners. We're going to be painting a lake scene using oil paint. The colours from top left to right are titanium white, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, on the next row cadmium red, crimson alizarin, permanent mauve, next row down primary cyan, French ultramarine, sap green, and the last one is ceruleum blue. I'm going to start with the sky using a 1-inch flat brush and some titanium white. The white line is marking out the bottom of the sky. Because it's white against white, it's difficult to see at this moment. I'm now mixing in some primary cyan and the titanium white together. I'm starting at the top right and working my way across using small strokes in a slightly curved motion. If you don't have a lot of different brushes, perhaps just the one, remember to clean it before each new colour, especially if you go from a darker colour to a lighter one. This is quite a large filbert brush, it's quite flat, and I'm using it to blend in the white at the bottom of the sky against the blue to merge the two together. Now I'm using a flat brush with very soft bristles, using downward strokes followed by horizontal ones, and this will blend the paint even more. Switching back to the filbert brush, I'm making some small clouds, and when it's pressed against the canvas, the round tip of the brush forms the top of the clouds. For the detail, the highlights on the clouds, I'm using a smaller round brush and dabbing gently. A few dabs using a smaller filbert brush to soften the strokes. I'm going to paint the highlighted trees in the background using lemon yellow and white. So I'm taking a pea-sized bit of yellow and a similar amount of white. I'll combine these on the edge of the blue mix to give it a hint of green. I'm applying this light coloured mix using the small filbert brush, and I'm going to paint it where I want the trees to be on the far side of the lake. There's enough background colour, so let's move on now to making a new colour, starting with white and a touch of yellow ochre, a bit of cadmium red. Even this small amount might be too much for this, so I'll put a bit on one side and mix in the remainder. The yellow ochre mix is going to be used for the sandy coloured bank next to the lake. More white to lighten some of it and mix it in. A small dab of lemon yellow. Separately, I'll just mix in some mauve with the red colour. Now I'm taking a little of the yellow ochre mix and adding to the red and mauve. I'm scraping a bit of the sky blue because I don't want to waste it. It's a bit light, so I'll go for ultramarine, only a tiny bit of it, and mix that in too. This is a small silicone chisel tool. It's great. You can see that it's very thin and angled when you look sideways on. I've added some of the darker colour and the lighter colour side by side. These are the shady and sunnier spots respectively. Firstly, I applied the paint using the chisel tool by stroking up and down. Then I spread the paint horizontally, taking into account that the bank will have an uneven surface. The darkest mix will go at the top for the shadow under the trees. Once this is on the canvas paper, I can spread the colour downwards towards the water's edge. There's also some shadow near the water where the sun doesn't reach, and a darker outline along the edge of the water. So in order to get a thinner line, I'm using the chisel tool sideways on, using a thin edge at the end. I'll keep working like this until the bank is complete. Now using a touch of sap green and ultramarine to make the shading darker. Possibly the darkest area of the bank, it's slightly curved and out of the direct sun. Now for the trees, using a small filbert brush, using the tip of the brush only, it adds a bit of texture. I've picked up some of the sky blue and the light yellow mix. I'll start dabbing on the left, and apart from the white of the sky, this will be one of the lightest areas. Going back to the chisel tool for a fir tree, I've picked up some French ultramarine and the primary cyan mixed together, starting at the base of the tree, doing downward sloping branches using the end of the chisel tool sideways on. There's more space between the branches closer to the top where it will catch more light. A bit of sky blue to make highlights. The branches won't all be the same colour, and some fir trees are more bluey green than a warm green. And finally, a distinctive triangular shape for the top of the tree. Using the filbert brush again, a little bit of sap green mixed with the light yellow mix to create a deciduous tree. A bit of lemon yellow and some white for the treetops. Also on the edge of the branches on the fir tree. My old round bristle brush, I'm taking some yellow ochre, lemon yellow and sap green, and I'm dabbing using the tip of the brush. I'll reapply the colour for darker areas and add a little of the Coeruleum blue. I'm making a new fir tree using the darker blues and some sap green, again using the chisel tool sideways on. These branches slope more than the first fir tree. It's like the top of the triangle. I try to move the brush as I go along so that the branches are not straight lines. They are thinner at the ends and thicker in the middle where the trunk is. Adding a bit to the bank again. Using sky blue again for the top of the branches. To make the base of the tree quite dark, I'm using some French ultramarine. Now I'm making some more trees using sky blue, the yellow mix and sap green. It's a similar technique to painting the clouds. Once again, the base of the tree will be darker. I'm boldly applying some ultramarine. Because the base colour hasn't yet dried, it will mix with this blue to make a bluey green. Some ultramarine and sap green together. The trees are becoming darker as we move along the lake to the right-hand side. Another fir tree using the dark blue mix. You can see the triangular shape at the top. The branches are irregular. It's like a bunch of coat hangers together on top of each other. Using yellow ochre and sap green together, these trees are primarily in the shade. Primary cyan is used to create some extra dark shadow. To make some shadow along the bank under some of the trees, I'm using the chisel tool and I'm applying some permanent mauve mixed in with the darker blues and sap green. I can blend the edge of the shadow line with the rest of the bank colour because the paint is still wet. A few highlights on the branches of the trees over here. And some more dark blue to add contrast. I'm making a bold move, creating the reflection of the trees in the water, starting with lemon yellow and green. I'm leaving a small gap of white, about half a centimetre below the bank. This is a flat bristle brush. I'm going to start by stroking down vertically to extend the length of the reflection and then paint across to blur a little to give the impression of water. I'm now adding some white to the lake beneath the green colour, using the same vertical and then horizontal strokes for a smooth finish. A bit of lemon yellow to brighten some areas. Introducing a new flat synthetic brush with very soft bristles, I'm mixing some ultramarine, primary cyan and white. Adding more white closer to the centre of the lake and blending with the white that I added earlier. Some horizontal water reflection lines using white and lemon yellow. I'm taking some of the paint from the palette to make a green for the background colour on the left, with some of the blue watercolour in front, using the large filbert brush. Now some ultramarine and green for a darker area. The riverbank on the far side will also have a reflection. To create this, I'm using the same sandy tones as before, and I'm filling in the area that was left blank. The same technique using the silicone tool. This time, some of the bank will appear to be split, as the reflection appears to separate and thin out as wavy lines in the water. darker areas beneath the shady spots and lighter tones beneath the sunny areas. I'm doing separate dark blue reflections for the darker fir trees to show contrast and to illustrate their proximity to the water. The water is already darker here, so I'm adding some lighter tones for the highlighted branches of this tree. Now for a bright earth colour using cadmium red and both yellows. This large silicone tool is ideal for covering larger areas. I'm using some of the colour for the bank on the far side and mixing with red for a shaded area, not too dark. Now for some of the light earth mix. This can be blended into the other paint on the canvas paper. I'll continue making light and dark areas. The shadow includes crimson, mauve and the dark shadow colour that we've already mixed. Now adding some lemon yellow for the sunlight. Using a small filbert brush, I can add some white to the water's edge for the ripples. Conversely, now that the water has highlights, I can add some darker ultramarine shadow to the edge of the bank. Since the ground colour has been laid, I can now add a few white highlights and a few more shady areas. It's time to work on the branches for the fir trees, using a mix of cerulean blue, sap green and primary cyan. I'll apply this using the old round bristle brush. An old toothbrush would work just as well. Make sure that it's an old one. Some green trees in the background using a mix of primary cyan and sap green. I'm going to mark out the tree trunks, initially using the small chisel tool. The colours include mauve, yellow ochre and sap green, and a hint of French ultramarine. Using a small round brush, I'll add some blue and paint over the trunks. I'm now using an extra small, round, synthetic brush. I want the tree trunks to be darker on one side, and it's a bit tricky. Using mauve and crimson, and then using a white mix and yellow ochre for the highlights on the left. To create some tree roots, I'm blending the colours at the base of the trees to show that the roots are going down into the earth. Firstly, using the silicone tool, stroking down left and right, It's like two little feet. Then I'll make a middle root and one or two more, and I'll repeat this for the other trees. Now I'm painting some tree branches. Adding a few highlights to the branches of the trees. For the tree top, I'm using extra ultramarine and some extra primary cyan added to the green to make it very dark, and I'm using the tip of the round bristle brush. I've left some gaps between branches. Using both yellows and the green that's on the brush and on the paper. I'm making some light areas on top of the occasional branch. The very tip of this tree has a highlight of lemon yellow and white. Here's a new fir tree in the foreground, following the same principles as before. The darker areas for the branches underneath and highlights on top and to the left. This tree has branches that curve upwards. Some sap green and lemon yellow for the lighter areas, and also fringed with white. A fir tree with downward sloping branches. And a small deciduous tree, like a silver birch, in the middle, and two bushes either side in the corners. A bit more shadow on the bank to the right of the trees. Finally, the tree trunks for the trees in the foreground. A few ripples on the lake. I hope that you've enjoyed this painting tutorial and had fun if you painted too. I look forward to being back soon.